This is going to be more of a education for
Mm-hmm.
you. And then the end of it, you can make a decision of like, hey, I want to keep doing a little bit more of this bi-weekly for yourself. And I'll explain as we go through because I'm gonna allow you to understand the patterns that we take on as children
Mm-hmm.
and where those patterns are. And you're gonna have like some homework around it
Okay.
because this is going to really open up your unconscious even more. So go ahead and just close your eyes for a moment, and I'm going to speak to your unconscious if you're okay with that. And this is you can call it affirmation, a prayer, whatever it is that I want you to tell yourself constantly as these are coming up, because now that you're aware, this stuff is going to come up more prevalently for you. So we're going to say to our unconscious, thank you for bringing up patterns and things that I was unconscious about. And I honor that. And I thank you for that. And I will not use any of these things that come up to demonize, weaponize myself for the detriment of myself. This is all to be used for my healing. And I want to thank you. Okay. Take a big deep breath in and exhale. The reason why we want to say that to our unconscious is because what it will do is it will shift and it will allow our unconscious to start opening up memories without us being mean to ourselves about it. Okay. So I'll share a story. You can come back if you want to, or you can lay there. It doesn't matter, whatever you want. As I started to do this work, this is called break method work. When I started to do this work, I still do it to this day. I get into a grieving process. Sometimes I beat myself up about it because I realize, fuck, all the shit I created, like everything that happened, I created. And sometimes it's a huge grieving process because you create a lot of things that you really didn't want to create. You wanted the opposite. And so for me, it makes me sad. And so I just want to share that with you, that there'll be things that come up. And I just don't want you to beat yourself up about it. I just want you to remember, I am human. This is a learning journey. Now I understand. And when things arise like this again, I can make different choices because you're not just creating a pattern shift for yourself, you're creating that for your children,
Mm-hmm.
right? So everything's quantum. If we change it, it's going to ripple out around us, whether we see it or not. It's going to happen. So whatever we shift, even if it was our great grandma's or if it was anybody else's, we're shifting that pattern. Therefore, it has a ripple effect all around us. I recorded this, but if you want to take notes, if you have a pad or a pen and paper, you might want to. So I want you to think of, so we talked about the brain last time, about the conscious, unconscious, all of that. Now we're going to get into a little bit more nitty gritty of patterns. So we're going to go in to our brain, and I want you to imagine that there's 3 layers of patterns in the brain. Okay. If you do any shamanic work or you do any work with, usually it's like in different cultures, they'll say like there's 3 parts, the upper, the middle world, and the lower world, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's really funny that it all brings up the 3. I believe that they're all correct. It's just our perceptions. Everybody sees it differently. So the 3 layers, they're all interconnected and woven. Okay. So also think of, this is a big one. Write this down if you want to. Inputs equal outputs. And I'll explain that a little different. Every input we get as a child weaves a pattern for the output, right? So say you're in a relationship and you're not getting your needs fully met. You're not getting what you need to output to somebody else, right? And we'll talk about this on a later day, and that's energy exchanges, because a lot of us are in unhealthy energy exchanges, whether we know it or not. So inputs, think of it as you're getting the inputs into you, and then the output is manifested in the real world as a child. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Inputting data into our brain, and eventually we're going to output it and manifest it into the world.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go over the top layer. So if you want to write top layer, and this is our internal. So the top layer is our internal and our private existence within. So this is the thoughts that nobody can see or feel. It's within ourselves. And this is where the assumptions take root. So again, the top layer, no one else can see them. They're not observable. There's no evidence in the physical world for this. It's all of your own thoughts and patterns. So this is where we assume things. This is where we assume people are upset with us. And this is our assumption that colors our perception of reality. Now in the top layer, this is the internal distortion begins because it's from our lens, our perception. So this part, the top layer, is setting the stage for the emotional physical reaction. And you'll understand this as we go through because there's stages. And what I want you to do is start watching the stages that you go into. So if you go into emotional, I want you to take, 2 steps back and go into the first layer and then go into the second layer, and then the third will produce the physical action. It's just really important for us to go, oh, I see a pattern happening, because you'll realize, and I'll explain it after I go over the patterns, but anyway, yeah, I'll explain it afterwards. Okay, so then we have the middle layer, and the middle layer is the bridge between the internal and the external world. So this is where the internal thoughts start to trigger emotion, and this is where we have chemical reactions within the body. So during this period, this is where maybe you stress out, your face turns red or flushing, facial expressions. I know mine come out very prominently when I talk. It's very hard. Now, it's still a sign that you're observing more because you still lack clarity in this part. And then this is where the body prepares for the output of the next layer. So remember when I said our brain is a computer system, we input and now we're processing and we're outputting. We're very similar to AI. We're very similar to all of that. Okay, so now the bottom layer, this is the external. This is where our thoughts, our emotions translate to full physical behavior. So this is, as we call, the realm of direct action, reaction, and coping mechanisms. And they leave the evidence in the physical world. So this is where we communicate openly. This is where we have physical anger, aggression, frustration. This is the phase that we start the fight or flight, or all the different ones that are out there. And this is where we are ending. It's like the ending portion of our conversation, right? Because we're finally outputting our brain cycle into full visible. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So the 3 layers work together to input ripples through output, creating predictable cycles, thoughts, emotions, and patterns. So each layer is an intervention for us to look at. It's allowing us to disrupt the pattern and to rewrite our story. So I'm going to go deeper in the layers. That was an overview. I want to explain a little bit about our brain as far as, think of a motherboard of your computer. It's never going to change. It's literally a motherboard. This part of what I'm teaching you is your motherboard. So anybody out there that says, I can change your patterns, they can help you to change certain patterns, but you're always going to have that motherboard. It's always going to work the way it works, okay? It's about creating new neural pathways off that motherboard. But if you're actively not doing that and keeping it up, you're going to go straight back to your pattern. I see this a lot in the spiritual communities. I actually see it a lot in religion as well. A lot in plant medicine, because people have plant medicine, they have epiphanies, they are one with the earth now and they understand it all, but they really don't do their work. And then they end up spiritual, but going back into a pattern, which is still their chaos or whatever it's going to take them to. It doesn't matter where it's at. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So our top layer of our brain, that is our origin layer. So origin layer means that this is literally your blueprint. So we call this top layer the adaptive source belief pattern. So this original, your origin one, this actually is a framework that is created by childhood. It's all about your childhood environment. So it's not about the massive traumas that happened. I always say those massive traumas or those one-off events, they create more PTSD in the body than actual patterns. Your pattern is actually habitual routines day in and day out that create your motherboard. And again, what I say, repeated inputs, it's repetitive. So this is like your caregivers, your family, who is around, and we'll get in that a little bit later. I just want to give you an overview of it all. So assumptions of what child can expect from the world. So when we think of ourselves from 0 to 7, right? What is our expectations of what we can assume from the world, right? And it's repetitive patterns of what we saw. This is more of like your subconscious rule book. So this is built to navigate safety, love, and connection. So example, and this is me to the T, emotional inconsistency was my childhood. I knew my parents loved me. I was taken care of. I had everything I needed. I just didn't have emotional love. And so what that did for me as I got older is I realized that love was conditional. I would only get it if I did something. Okay. And that played out in every relationship that I ever had. The next thing is that if I'm not doing acts or services, then love can disappear at any time for me. It's not constant, okay? That's my origin. Another thing is assumptions not consciously chosen. So our assumptions are not constantly chosen for us. They are survival mechanisms.
I'm on a call. It'll have to be after, honey.
You can get it if you need it.
What's that? We'll call your brother. Maybe he'll stop and get something. These kids, all they care about is food.
Good. Good for them. Um, okay, so a lot of this is carved. I always make I do a lot of the computer analogy, but imagine an uncarved block that you have in front of you, right? And each day we're carving into it and we're creating a pattern. So when you think of that, think of a repetitive environment cues that you go through that is now carving your block. Make sense? All right. So now ages 6 to 12, this is where we get to refine our responses to the world based on our assumption. So this is where everything really starts to like be solid in our assumptions to the world. Because we've kind of done our carving on our block and now it's pretty damn solid. That's exactly what it's going to be. Make sense? Adaptive source belief patterns, this is where they all take shape, is from 0 to 7. Okay. And this is also our theta state. I won't get into all of that. But so the origin belief establishes what can be expected. And then the adaptive belief pattern answers what to do about it. And that is when you get into ages 6 to 12. Any questions?
This all just makes me so sad. Like,
I
I'm
know.
just so sad.
I know. But at least you have the knowledge and you know that now, right? And that's what I say. Like, as I went through this myself, I grieved a lot.
I feel like I have grieved a lot, but it's like reinforcing the grief.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just like, and then I look back at how I've been as a mother navigating this. It just, it's like not hard to love children. I don't get it,
But and also think like I'll give a story about myself. My son is 26. I have 3 grandbabies. They live in Oregon. There was a massive thing that happened, and I'll explain that as we go through this because I contributed to it, which I never thought I did. And then I realized I did. And so we're not very close anymore like we used to be, right? So I can't just go to him and have these conversations and share these things with him because they live all the way in Oregon. Like I'm lucky to see him every 2 to 3 months. Right? Your kids are at home. You get to have conversations with them.
I'm incredibly proud at how I've navigated motherhood. It enrages me that my own parents failed me so badly.
Yeah. And also know they didn't have the tools that we did. They literally they're conscious. If you want to think of it as our consciousness is rising, right? Their conscious wasn't even able to be there. Can you imagine where you were like 10 years ago? I think to myself where I was 10 years ago and I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know anything, right? And they're kind of still stuck there. I always say a lot of times I won't work with people that are over 55 or 60 because their computer system is so ingrained, you can't get rid of it. It's like near impossible unless they're super committed to doing work. So you just have to give them grace. You really have to look at it and just say, they didn't know. They imagine their data system that got transformed from their parents. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know.
I know. So earlier, let's see, where was I? I have my notes, so I keep on track. Okay. So for me, like an example, so during that stage when my block was getting carved, my adaptive source belief that I adapted must perform or please to keep love. So this was literally the only way that I knew that I would get loved unconditionally is if I pleased. It's a majority of the wellness population out there that are coaches, gurus, whatever they want to call themselves. This is really their source belief pattern, unless they've done a lot of work around it. But this is where we all start, okay? So this is really like your life-based purpose of distinctiveness. So this is, we'll get into the thoughts of why we think this when we're that young. But do you understand the origin part? So again, ages, I say 0 to 7. We'll hone in a little deeper. They're ages 2 to 5 years old. It's the repetitive chisel in the block that carves the child's assumptions about the world. Ages 6 to 12, this is where the adaptive belief pattern happens. So if you want to think about it of the 3 layers that we just went over, now think of this as the origin, which is the inputs that you're getting in, and then the emotional part of it, which reaches out to the external world, right? So this is the same system. The origin, the top layer, is getting the inputs in of what we need. Then we go into ages 6 to 12, which is the adapted belief forms. So this is where our forms start to adapt a belief around them, okay? And this is what is eventually going to be bringing out into the environment, are responding to the environment in the world around us. Okay. So we perceive reality and decisions in the origin state, the top layer. I think you get this. Okay. So the middle layer, which would be the second layer that we talked about, that is the emotional addiction cycle. This is where we now get addicted to emotions that are repetitive. So this is the transition from internal thoughts and external behaviors. Again, it's right in the middle. So it's not going out yet. It's inside. So this is a 3-part cascade. So it has 3 layers in this emotional part. So this is where we have hormonal issues, skin issues, physical, chemical in our bodies. Okay. This is the precursor to our behaviors that form and come out. And this part is deeply ingrained in our brain. It will always be there. It will never leave. It's our instinctive nature. It's how we were programmed. So this is, if you want to think about it as our constitution, this is where the pattern is formed. So this intentionally is the place that we can really grab it and repattern it, because a lot of us can feel the emotions. We don't necessarily sometimes realize our internal thoughts or our thoughts that are happening because they can happen unconsciously, but we can feel emotion, and this is where we can tap into it. So the 3 distinct parts is, number 1 is origin, number 2 is protective, and the 3rd is escalating. And we'll get into that another time. But just know that when you get to an emotional part, you're going to have an emotional origin that we talked about. Okay. Origin is going to stay the same for different variations that we speak on. But you're going to have an origin, and then you're going to have a protective mechanism. So you're going to do something to protect yourself. And then when that doesn't work, you have an escalating origin. Make sense? And that's a pattern just in the emotional cycle, but it's an addictive emotional pattern. The origin, the first one, the first pattern in the emotional, the origin is always rooted in fear. That's every single person on this planet. The reason why it's rooted in fear is because everything is unknown. We don't know anything. We don't know what's going to happen. So everything is rooted in fear. Now, some people will link the fear with shame. Not everybody, but some people will. So the first origin is always fear, or fear with shame. And shame would be like they're scared of getting humiliated, ridiculed, right? So maybe your parents humiliated you after you did something, then you would link that with fear of shame.
Can we get, okay, so my dad's biggest fear was being embarrassed, and I don't know that I was embarrassed, but I feel the fear of it. Like I feel like I've healed it a lot, but can that pass down, or does it have to be that I was embarrassed?
It can pass down just from inputs of hearing that.
Okay.
But it depends because it might not be, because if that was his biggest fear, he may have not purposely did that to you, right? So it would be something like you did something consecutively as a child and then you were ashamed about it.
So my parents, I really want to understand this. My parents' house was a hoarder house. It was my mom's fault. And my dad was like terrified of people finding it out. So the way that my dad was in the house was not great, but the way that he showed up in the world was like sweet. Everybody thought he was a big teddy bear, but he was like a nightmare. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. So it was like a lot of these things I don't, but there was that pattern of fear around being found out. Like if they find out who we really are. And that is something that I carry deeply. Like if people, like if somebody gets close enough to me, they will find out.
We'll go through it and it will pop up for you a little bit more if you feel like that too, because we'll do little testing. But usually what I see with fear of shame is a lot of times like you were embarrassed for doing something or ridiculed in front of people, and then so you would shame
I
yourself.
mean, yeah, that was constant too. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I
I
have
get the visual of like, it's like being in a building that's like a mall where like the gates close, but then the doors lock, and then it's like I'm like, yeah, I do all these things.
We all do. Why there's literally the patterns, you're gonna die laughing because there's only three origin patterns for the whole world. Every single person only has three origin patterns. That's it. It's pretty interesting once you, because once you know this information, you're gonna go out into the world and be like, oh my God, I see it. And you're gonna notice that when somebody shows up, they're gonna be the opposite pattern that you are. They're not gonna come into your life because they're the same being that you are. They're gonna come in because they're completely opposite. So I don't believe so. That is the first. So again, we have the origin, then we have emotional, and then we have the external, right? So
Okay.
we're just in emotional right now, and there's three stages in the emotional. So the first one is the origin pattern, right? The fear. Everybody has fear. Some people have fear, shame. The second one is the protective emotion. And this is an instinctive strategy to guard against any type of threat. So protective emotion is either going to be anger, apathy, or anxiety, apathy. Now, let me explain apathy, because people will say, oh, I have apathy. Apathy is literally you can't get out of bed and brush your teeth. Like you literally just can't move. So apathy is pretty strong, right? It's not, apathy isn't, oh, I'm depressed and I'm just gonna lull around. It's literally people can't even function. That's apathy. Now, when I go into anxiety, I don't feel like people understand anxiety really well. Anxiety isn't like I'm anxious. Anxiety is you literally withdraw. I'm out. This is way too much. It's not an anxious, I mean, you feel the anxiousness feeling when you're somewhere, but anxiety is really a withdrawal from everything. That there's truly, well, I do believe there's soulmates out there, but it's if they're willing to work with you on your relationship. Okay. So, I already went over that with you. Okay. This is something also that shows up in this protective emotional cycle is there's cycles that show up. So, for instance, there's always really a cycle that goes, let's just say a cycle one, a cycle two, a cycle three, where this protective emotion pattern shows up with something, right? So say you're in a relationship and you've had this cycle and it keeps coming, and then all of a sudden it's going to show up about the sixth or seventh cycle that you get anxiety and you are like, I'm out. I can't speak to you for a while, right? But it didn't show up for the 5 cycles before the 6th or 7th cycle. Does that make sense? So meaning that I can have anger and let's just say apathy, right? My apathy may not show up until I am on my cycle of anger with this person 6 times. And then on the seventh time, I get really angry. I go straight into apathy and I can't even get up and brush my teeth. That alone is a cycle. Does that make sense? So the next time I have apathy may not show up again for the next seventh or eighth cycle.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I'm trying to make sense of it in my own life, but I'm going to stop doing that
Yeah.
because
Just take this as education because I don't believe you go into apathy, but there's cycles that can go longer, is what I meant. Like they can be little cycles and then there's a big chaos cycle. So
yeah,
if I
that makes
see it in my life, I can say, okay, I remember a massive cycle happened when I was 3. I don't know in between that because it was all kind of gray. But then I remember a cycle when I was 16. And then I remember another cycle when I was 21. And then I remember where that were big cycles in my life, right? So they can show up your sixth or seventh small or cycle.
okay.
If that makes sense. Okay. So the last layer in the emotional part is the escalating. So this is where we feel that our protective mechanism failed. So maybe anger didn't work, or going solo or by ourselves with anxiety didn't work. So this is actually the basis of our survival mode is the escalating. So this is where rebellion happens and pushing boundaries. So this is where you can go into anxiety and then you automatically switch into anger. I tend to go into anger first and then I go into anxiety. So I get mad first. And then eventually I'm like, you know what? Fuck you. You're not even worth talking to. I'm out. Happens in all my relationships. Just, anger can be your protective. And then it escalates and it moves inward. And then that's where it shifts to the other emotion. So again, by addressing the middle layer is the crucial layer. When we can get into that middle layer, we can rewire behaviors, emotional triggers, and emotional responses. Now, the bottom layer, that is our timeline pattern. This is what's going to share and show us our patterns. So if we think of that, it's our tangible aspect of behavior, decision that leaves evidence in the world, and the structure and sequence helps us to understand the type, the quality, and the timing. So this is helping us to understand the oscillation behavior between the set of cycles that we go through. And let me tell you, they are not random patterns. Everything in your life will be the same pattern. So once we understand the pattern, this is where we understand and it provides us a roadmap. So our remote emotional response will equal our actions. So internal equals external. I want to keep moving, but I'm kind of being told to just stop for a moment because that was a lot of info. So how are you feeling?
Good. I'm super analytical and one question that I have is so I taught myself, like I used to specifically with like my ex and my in-laws, his parents were it was so fucked up. But like I would instantly like react and so I taught myself to slow like way down so that I could respond instead of like that instinctual reaction. So do you think, or maybe you're going to get into this, but like how we change the pattern? Not necessarily that the pattern actually changes, but we disrupt it.
Yeah, and you disrupt the pattern. You already did it by doing that. Many people don't even have the concept to do that. Yeah, so you've already disrupted the pattern, but I want you now to start being conscious of everything you do because you're going to see an underlying pattern with everything because it's all going to be the same thing.
I so want to understand because I'm like, well, I used to just be anger, like fucking anger. But I'm like, I don't know that I'm anger anymore. And then I'm like, well, now that I've like slowed down the anger, I jump way more quickly to like being avoidant, like shut down, done.
Yeah. So anger a lot of times is misplaced. It's really not anger, it's frustration. Put it as anger, but it's really not. It's we're frustrated. And when we're frustrated, then we go straight into, shutting down. So anger could be associated with frustration. That's usually what happens. Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm getting the sense of is for me to stop trying to understand myself and just let it unfold.
But I can even go into I can actually, maybe that's a good thing right now to pop up here to give us a break before we move on. Let me see if I can pull up all the emotions so I have them. There we are. Okay, I found it. Okay. So, have I shared with you before my thoughts on emotions?
No, I don't think so.
When we have conversations with people, they'll say, "Oh, I feel this way," or "I feel that way," right? So I say feeling is a bunch of emotions. I always say, you know how mud, you get sand in there, you get rocks in there, you get all different types of things, and that makes mud, right? So I say feelings are mud because a lot of us don't know how to feel. We don't know what it is. We're like,
Mhm.
oh, that feels icky, or I don't. So, what I start to do with my clients is I pull out the feel aspect and I say, okay, what is the emotion? So, our bodies hold emotion, they don't hold feelings. So, when we think of our emotion, our body is only going to hold on to, okay. So, fear is based in intentional emotion response to perceived threat.
Mhm.
Fear and shame is an emotional response, perceived threat, assumption of shame, stimulus will be attached to it. So we fear something, but then we get shamed over it, right? We have anxiety, and that is more intrusive thoughts creating tension and prompting you to plan or strategize. That's where a lot of times we go solo on our or around people. Anger is based in a feeling that something is unfair, unjust, or needs to be addressed. And guilt is our self-conscious nature. Typically, this is directly tying to a negative outcome to an input you caused. Now, frustration. This is rooted really in addressing a wrong. This is, however, internalized rather than externalized. So, a lot of times, anger and frustration come together. So, a feeling is a narrative you blend with emotion to give an additional meaning based on your subjective experiences. Questions?
No, I just would like to state that I, after reading that, I feel like the majority of my childhood was frustration because
Yes.
everything went internal, and I still do that.
And so it's giving yourself grace. I do the same thing. I can't kick and scream and throw a tantrum and yell at somebody, right? And so we internalize it.
And my biggest issue with it is I'm like, you couldn't see it on my face. People have no clue how I'm feeling. Like there's a whole world happening and they have no idea.
And that's your origin state. So those are all of your thoughts that are now starting to create these emotions that are happening. But good news is there's questions that we start asking ourselves when we get into those states to start breaking that pattern.
Oh, it just came up as like, but do I want to? It's like a warm hug inside. I mean, it's with daggers, but it's still, oh,
It's your safety mechanism.
yeah.
Your brain does not want you to heal.
Yes.
It doesn't.
Yeah, I get
It's
that.
doing what it got embedded with. It thinks that it's for safety and security. It literally doesn't want you to heal. It doesn't want you better.
What's funny is what I'm working on with Milana is so I have about a new best friend for the past like 10 years, whatever. And I was telling her about something about how my mom makes cookies and they're my favorite cookies. And she just does not do a good job because she uses the cheapest peanut butter. They're no bake cookies. So this woman shows up to my house. She made no bake cookies with the expensive peanut butter. And it was like, I was just like, and I was like, thank you. And she's like, well, you're gonna eat them? Like to communicate the good thing, not just bad things. Like, can't you tell? No, she couldn't. And so it's like my homework is to be like, hey, that meant a lot to me. So I do want to heal this. Like
Yeah.
I do.
It's probably because when you were younger, you really couldn't show it.
No, I couldn't.
That's a pattern you have to start doing the opposite with now.
It's so gross. It's so gross.
Yeah. It's
Ugh.
shifting the pattern and doing the opposite. Like a lot of times, for instance, my relationship with my husband, I go into anxiety where I just shut down after I get angry. And I have to do the exact opposite. I don't want to hear him anymore, and I still have to talk.
I'm like, stop breathing.
I know. I'm like, do you ever just stop? So now we're going to go into timeline patterning. I'm going to go over just really quick. We went over the three layers of the brain pattern. We went over the origin.
Mhm.
And then the second layer is the emotional. And that emotional pattern has 3 layers in the emotional.
Mhm.
Okay. And those 3, again, are the origin, the protective, and the escalating. Then the bottom layer is the timeline pattern. Okay. So this is where the pattern repeats itself over and over. Now, as we went through the pattern and the pattern repeats itself, this part is the roadmap for ourselves. And this is the part that gets a little confusing. And that's why I took a little break, because this pattern is a pattern of oscillation. So, oscillation, if we think of a plus, meaning, for instance, say I get angry and then I have a plus, maybe I will go into chaos. So, a plus is like it's like more intense.
Mhm.
Or there's a minus that goes internal, right? So I
Okay.
just want you to understand like the plus, the minus. So what you're going to see is you're going to have oscillating emotions. So oscillating emotions could be anger plus, anger minus. Does that make sense?
What is the plus or the minus?
So what it does is it shows a pattern that maybe I get frustrated and then my frustration goes to physical beating the shit out of somebody, right? That's the plus.
So it's not like an external factor. It's just that's the direction you went with it.
So for instance, I can be angry and then I go into straight chaos and like pull somebody's hair or slap them, right? Or from anger, I go straight into negative that I'm like, I just shut down. I go in internal. Does that make sense? So this is what the pattern, this is the underlying pattern that happens within ourselves. So it's like the direction that anger takes us or the
Okay.
direction anxiety takes us. A lot of people go into anxiety, anger. That's a majority of people. I go into anger, anxiety. So it just depends on how you deal with the patterns that happen. And it gives us the intensity of that pattern. Make sense?
Mhm.
Because anger is going to go somewhere external, right? It's not going to just stay inside. So maybe your anger goes negative where it turns into like internal frustration. Remember the layers, how we did the emotional and then it goes into physical world. This is the
Mhm.
timeline pattern. This is where it goes out into the world now.
Can we stop the timeline pattern, or is it like, no, this is encoded in you, so every 7 years, this big thing happens?
No, the timeline pattern can change, but the second emotional, that will never change. So it's just finding the triggers that happen and going, oh, that's happening, and then creating new neural pathways out of it. So a plus is bold behavior, and maybe a negative is shift backwards. So some people can be a plus minus. So they can be angry and then all of a sudden start a huge argument and then go home and go, oh my God, I feel so bad I did that. I feel so bad that I created that chaos. So people can be a plus minus. So they can go into straight like cause chaos and then a day later or a couple hours later go, I feel really shamed that I did that. Or vice versa. They can go negative into positive. I know it's a lot to take in. Bear with me.
No, I'm understanding. I'm just,
Okay, so each phase represents an output generated by a sequence. So again, our origin created the protective, which created the escalating, and the escalating is the external projection out into the world. We started with our origin, protective mechanism, and then our escalating, and our escalating goes out into the world. Protective is protective, emotional, all of that. To confuse you a little bit more, our timeline pattern, which is our last pattern, right? The one that creates the patterns, the last one. It has 4 distinct timeline phases. So remember the emotional had the 3, and then now the last one has 4 distinct phases. and each responds from an output of the emotional cycle. And this is where we get into the positive and negative. You'll understand it once we get through this part.
How long is usually a timeline pattern? Is it like a day or is it like 10 years?
Be a day, could be 10 years. It just depends on there's different patterns. Like here, if I'll give an example, when I was 16, I got kicked out of my mom's home. When my son was 16, I kicked him out of my home. That's a big pattern. But it's not a pattern that's happening every day. Then there's patterns that, for instance, I'm mad at my husband and then I get angry with him and then I feel bad for getting angry with him. And that happens, I don't know, 3 times a week or more than that. There are different patterns, but it's really the same pattern, just different experiences, if that makes sense. 4 distinct timeline patterns that happen. So the first one is a primary pattern, and the second is a secondary pattern, and the third is a tertiary. I messed this word up.
Like tertiary?
Thank you. I can't say the word for the life of me. Tertiary.
I don't even know if that's right, but it sounds right.
No, it is right because I can't say it. Tertiary. Tertiary. I'm gonna start doing TURTS. Okay, tertiary phase 1. And then the fourth one is tertiary phase 2. You're gonna die laughing when we go over these because you're gonna be like, I do this. This will give you a clear, absolute roadmap of how you do everything in life.
As opposed to the emotional 3?
So emotional is just in that middle layer.
Right.
The third part, this is like literally your roadmap of what you do.
A little bit, yeah.
So we'll go back. The top layer, here, we'll go back to the origin. So the origin is literally, think about this. Your origin is always rooted in fear. And we're going to get into the fears that you have. So your origin, which is your top layer, right? Then your middle layer is emotional. Then the third one is the actual patterns playing out in the world.
Okay.
Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
The patterns that play out in the world are your primary, your secondary, your tertiary, and your tertiary too. Make sense? We call them origin source belief patterns. So let's see if you match with any of these and then send you some homework. So the first pattern is chaos. And chaos usually happens in abusive environments or unpredictable or neglect. Chaos is where they have lack of observational cause or effect. So a lot of times this is where we say nothing matters. Why do I do it? So it's an external crisis where life appears cruel. And this is also where addiction happens to struggle with suicide and self-sabotage. So somebody that's in true chaos. So say like somebody for you and me, our origin and fear, like where we came from, is not chaos. It's only about 3% of the world, but chaos can show up in different other elements. And I'll explain that later. Say our origin pattern, right? So our origin, our blueprint of fear is most likely not chaos because you probably wouldn't be here with me having this conversation.
I do remember you saying that.
Okay. Chaos is maybe you would eventually, but chaos, a lot of times you see them in substance abuse, alcohol, drugs, suicide. A lot of these people are in jail. Not all of them. Some of them have worked through it, but that's really chaos. And chaos is where you're a little child and you know your parents should be doing something for you as an adult, but they don't do it and you really need it. I mean, you can't do it for yourself because you're too young. That causes a lot of chaos in your world. You can't do anything. Right? So that's really, so the inputs for them are chaos. It really is neglect and abuse. It's unstable living environments. It usually happens with if they have parents with addiction or mental illness, or their caregivers disappear a lot. They have a lot of high exposure to violence, conflict. They have a lack of safety and security. The next two, remember how I said there's only 3 origin patterns? That's the first one is chaos. So the second one is abandonment. And abandonment is, and this was me, is life looks polished from the outside, but the child realizes the parent's inability to be dependable and trustful. So it's really a lack of trust with our caregivers, and it's an environment marked by inconsistency and unpredictability. So what it does is it causes these people to develop hyper independent and prioritize self-trust over reliance of others. So the biggest thing I say is trusting others is unsafe, and we attract who we are a lot of times. So this is where we input, remember the block that gets carved, we input and generate abandonment. So that means emotionally unavailable, unreliable, inconsistent parents that say one thing and do another, responsible for somebody else's emotional state, right? We're responsible. I mean, I still remember my mom always upset and crying. And we have a fear of expressing our needs. And it comes from caregivers who are overly self-focused, and they have an absence of emotional and not just physical. So we, again, hyper independence, that was our survival mechanism, and early exposure to betrayal of trust. The biggest question that we ask ourselves when we are little that creates the origin pattern. The first question is, am I safe? As a child, that's what we ask. Am I safe? Then as we kind of get that pattern down, the next question we ask is, am I loved? And that's what creates a lot of the origin patterns. So the next pattern is rejection. So the biggest thing I can say to people, if you made it to rejection, you're doing fucking awesome, because that means that your parents were consistent, you felt safe. But now your pattern is, am I loved? So I'm assuming I don't know, we made it to abandonment. So it's chaos, abandonment, then rejection. So we made it to the second one. So we're still working on the second one before we can get to the third one, right? Where the rejection pattern, they felt safe and secure. So there was like, oh, but am I loved? Right? So we're dealing with, am I loved and am I safe? So rejection pattern, go figure, that the child feels loved, cared for, and secure. They have it all. And even receiving everything that they receive, they put themselves in a victim thinking consciousness. So this rejection pattern acts and manifests in two ways. So remember when I say oscillating, this rejection pattern has two patterns. It has one or the other. So the one pattern is they seek attention to play out power dynamics. So they set up scenes with others to fail them because they are rejection, right? So they need to prove that pattern. Their unconscious does it. The second part of rejection, or the second person, so there's two different types. The second type is isolate, avoiding interaction due to assumptions of being embarrassed. Rejection. They fixate on others and how they perceive them due to unresolved relational insecurities. These people lead to assumptions of others' thoughts, of perceptions of themselves. So these are the people that want to look good in somebody else's eyes. It's how they are perceived. So the different types, again, one type can be centered on control and validation, and it really reflects emotional immaturity. So they really don't have the security of knowing that they are loved for who they are. So any inputs they get automatically generate rejection. So these people come from an environment where the parents are either super disciplined or no discipline at all. It's either or. Yeah. But they do have stable, loving caregivers, and they have trust with their parents. So their perception of unconditional love, so they have the perception of it, they do that, but they're craving more of it. These people are more encouragement, performance-based validation. So they had a lot more favoritism or social comparison. So a lot of exposure to favoritism, like, well, your brother did this, or, my brother's definitely this pattern. Their biggest thing for family is about honor and reputation. So for them, it's about honor and reputation. This also is within religions and cultural reinforced worthiness. And they have a huge fear of group rejection or judgment. So you'll see these people, they have a correct way to behave while suppressing their emotions.
This is my brother. Million percent.
And
My older
it
brother.
usually has to be completely opposite. Like our siblings have to be opposite of what we are. Yeah. So they avoid struggling privately to be seen as weak and problematic, and seeks attention to create or avoid rejection. And you'll learn a little bit more about rejection types because there's two different types. One is more of a power struggle. They are in the limelight, they create the chaos, they do all the things. And another one is completely opposite rejection pattern. Like they don't want to be seen because they'll be rejected. It's just two different polarities of them, but they're both rejection.
So if they're not the first two, they automatically are rejection.
Yes. There's
Okay.
only three patterns because when we've come into this world, we come in fear.
See, I think both of my boys are the third, and my oldest is a lot like my older brother, but he doesn't care about people's opinion of him. So I don't understand how that would, like, genuinely, this kid just gives no fucks.
Yeah. So I'll explain. So let me see if I have. So even though he's a rejection pattern, he'll say what he wants to say, but deep down inside, he still fears of being rejected out of the group. It's an underlying thing.
Okay.
He'll create the chaos. He'll create the arguments.
Yeah, he does do
Right?
that.
And then you have the isolating type, and that avoids rejection and fixates on it. So they don't even do anything about it. So, for instance, someone who's verbal and says that they don't care, they're creating that pattern automatically to get rejected to prove that they're correct.
Okay, so I think that he is probably more that way, and my younger son is the first one.
Yeah.
My younger son is way more vocal,
Yeah.
but like deeply wants the admiration, like the validation.
That's really what they want. But when they're more vocal, so my husband is a vocal rejection, and I can see it play out a lot of times because it's actually really funny because he actually so there's another variation that isolates back and forth between them too. And that one is really hard to like pinpoint because they can isolate back and forth, and we'll go over that later. But I think my husband does that. He isolates, not isolates, but whatever the word is, goes back and forth. But if you think of rejection as far as like they're gonna say something and hope to, I don't want to say hope, but know that the outcome is them going to be getting rejected because that's the pattern of their rejection cycle. See, I'm rejected. It's that victim narrative. Makes sense?
Yeah, yeah. It's
And
just
then the isolating won't even try because they have a fear of being rejected and shamed, and so they don't even go into group settings and do things.
yeah, that's my older son. He won't. My younger son will poke, and he did this like right when I was getting divorced. He'd say things like, "Well, Dad bought his new girlfriend a camper. Didn't you want a camper?" But like I didn't give in to that, but my ex does give into it, so it's like he gets it from him.
Yeah. Well, it's feeding his rejection pattern
Mhm.
is what it's doing. It's giving it confirmation, so it's feeding the loop. You're breaking the pattern. So he's not getting the fuel to come back after you. Is your ex-husband more like your younger boy?
No, I think he is abandonment.
Okay.
His mom is, his parents were there, but it was not worse than mine, different.
Yeah. What I would like us to do is we're at 3:30. Okay. What I want you to do for me is homework. Okay, so I want you to write down your top five influencers when you were younger. You don't have to
Hmm.
do it now, you can do it later. And so, top five influencers or caregivers. So, for instance, it was for me, it was like my grandma, my mom, my dad, and really my babysitters. And what was the top five common emotions when I was younger?
Examples of emotions.
Yeah. So for me, I felt sad a lot, or angry a lot, or frustrated.
Fear, is fear one or no?
Yeah. Fear is one.
Imagine the kids that were like happy.
Well, if they have happiness in there, Like if you feel happy when you were a kid, I want you to write that down. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Okay. So, no, I think we're good. We're going to do that. And then what I want you to do is I want you to say, like, if the top one was like your mom, and then in one left hand side, put the top five people that you were around, and then write that down. And then on the opposite side, you're going to write down emotions, the top five. So, say you have sadness, anger, whatever it is. I want you to get five different markers, and I want you to say, with your mom, I want you to mark each one of the emotions with that color marker. And then for your dad, use a different color marker and do all the emotions with your dad. And then when you're done with that, I want you to go ahead and calculate, like, say for instance, you have more anger. So put anger at the top. So you would number it down. So say it was like anger and then it was sadness and frustration. I want you to number those going down, because then that's going to give me an idea of where you're at.
Okay. So, for example, the emotions that I felt with my mom and my dad would not have been the same as I felt with my one grandma. So, what I felt with my one grandma would not even be at the top five. Like, I did feel loved. I did feel happy when I was with her.
Your
But,
grandma,
like, it
is
was
she,
overwhelming to feel the sadness and the frustration and the anger with my parents.
but is she in your top five?
I mean, there wasn't very many people in my life.
Okay. Was your grandma in there?
Yeah.
So you would put happiness over there, or you wouldn't circle anything if it was the top five emotions. And then we're going to calculate, like, what number is the most and put that in
Okay.
numeric, whatever order. That's it, sister. Do you want to schedule another call?
Yes.
Okay. So it would be, I would say about an hour and a half. 125. Well, it would be 150 for an hour and a half. Are you okay with that?
Yep.
Um, what day works for you?
Any day.
Okay. Do you want to do the week of the 5th, or you want the week of the 12th?
Let's do the week of the 5th.
How's the 6th?
That works.
I can
Same.
do I can do a 11:30. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Pacific time. So that would be 12:30, 1:30, 2:30 your time.
Yep.
You're okay with that? Okay. I'll change that. All right. And then just if you want to, you can take a picture and send it to me,
Okay.
like when you're done with the homework.
Okay.
Okay.
That
Hey.
works.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
Thanks, you too.
Bye.
Bye.